A lot of words have been said about Keir Starmer, and he's now gone, the sixth prime minister to be in power and then lose power in the last decade since Brexit. Some people have said, oh, what a decent guy he was. He just couldn't connect to the electorate. This is just nonsense. This is just Westminster groupthink. Oh, he was a good guy. No, when he got up there and spoke in front of Downing Street, he just started with this falsehood. He's got this sort of mythology that he's created about the amazing things he did for Labour, and he claims that he inherited a party that was morally, politically, and financially bankrupt. This is false. Corbyn's Labour Party was in financial surplus thanks to record membership numbers. And Starmer came in and wasted millions on entirely unnecessary legal payouts to former staff members, all to prove that there was an anti-Semitism crisis in the party, and that crisis was manufactured to destroy Corbyn's leadership. But the truth is that it was Starmer who has morally and politically bankrupted Labour. Hundreds of thousands of Labour members left. Some were forced out. Labour's polling and election results collapsed. He did win a landslide in 2024, thanks to the Tory party's collapse. And also we've got a strange electoral system. He was able to win a big majority with only a third of the vote. Within Labour, Starmer imposed this sort of very repressive regime where everybody had to toe the line. If you broke with the party line in Parliament, or even just as a local councillor, you could be suspended, you might be expelled. As a result of that, many people left the party. Then he becomes Prime Minister. And really, we have to talk about what his legacy was over the 2 years he was Prime Minister. And ultimately, it comes down to one word, Gaza. That is the most negative legacy. Complicity in the Gaza genocide. And on top of that, this draconian crackdown, which really is probably the most repressive use of state power that we've seen in England or in Britain for about 2 centuries. Thousands of peaceful protesters, as well as journalists, have been arrested, charged with the crime of opposing genocide or supporting direct, non-violent action to try and end that genocide. Basically, Starmer, in almost 3 years since October the 7th, from the beginning of Israel's genocidal war, he has never once condemned Israeli war crimes. And that is despite human rights groups, the experts on genocide reaching the consensus this is genocide. Nobody on the Labour front bench has ever categorically said this is a genocide, these are war crimes. That's Starmer's doing. That's his legacy. And the crazy thing is, this is a human rights lawyer, Keir Starmer, who actually prosecuted genocide when he served as a legal counsel for Croatia in 2014 in a case at the International Court of Justice against Serbia. And he defined genocide in that case. And it's clear by his own definitions of the sort of crimes that took place that Israel has committed genocide. And yet he stands up in November 24 in the House of Commons and says, well, I know what genocide is, and that's why I've never described what's happened in Gaza as genocide. Straight out denial. And of course, he rejected calls for a ceasefire early on in the war, and he continued to do that, even knowing that tens of thousands of civilians had been killed by Israel in Gaza, which he calls serious politics. He justified that in interviews where he'd say, yeah, tens of thousands have died, but I couldn't just call for a ceasefire. That wouldn't be serious. So where is the moral bankruptcy? Is that not moral bankruptcy? I think it is. We had British weapons still going to Israel during the genocide, hundreds of surveillance flights over Gaza, sharing intelligence. In September 2025, he welcomes the Israeli president, Isaac Herzog, to Downing Street. Full kind of official visit, handshake, whole works. That's 2 years into the genocide when Gaza's been starved. And Herzog was a man who said there were no innocents in Gaza, and his statements are in the ICJ case against Israel on genocide charges. And of course, there are other things about Starmer's claims about morality and him being decent. He took about £100,000 worth of freebies from his rich friends. And then, of course, the thing that finished him off was appointing Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States. Mandelson, friend of Jeffrey Epstein. Anyone, dog in the street, could tell you this was a disastrous appointment. he did it. Let's be fair to him and say there have been some achievements in these 2 years under his government: falling NHS waiting lists, new renters' rights have come in, employment rights. But the cost of living crisis that he inherited is ongoing. Everybody can feel it. Anybody who's on a sort of normal income or even a higher income can feel it, and he's failed to deal with that. And he's a tone-deaf politician, and that's because the truth is he was the candidate of the establishment, really. His masters are not the voters, they're rich party donors, big tech, BlackRock, who they've done all these deals with, and of course the UK's big allies, Washington and Israel. In his resignation, he has said that he wants his legacy to be an increase in UK defence spending on the next generation warfare, AI, surveillance, killer drones, data centres. That's the big shift, the sort of military revolution that the defence lobby wants to see Britain spending billions on. And he's going to try and sort of impose that, even though he's leaving office, onto his successor, who's likely to be Andy Burnham. In very, very short order, Burnham will probably be Prime Minister. And of course, a lot of people have got a lot of hopes that Andy Burnham will be a different kind of leader and Labour will change and things will improve under Burnham. You know, Burnham is under a hell of a lot of pressure from the bond markets, from the media, and from his own party machine. And this party was made in the image of Starmer and Tony Blair. And that is to keep the ship steady, to carry on. Put a new personality who's from the north, who has a better sort of communication style, but not really change anything. And you can tell that because the pressure is on Burnham to immediately start to cut welfare spending on the poor people, disabled, and move that money into the military. Not sure that's what voters want. Burnham will have to act fast and deliver real benefits to ordinary people, and he's got to ignore the pressure to maintain the status quo politics that has been failing this country for decades. If he doesn't, if he succumbs to pressure, he's going to be another failed prime minister serving corporate interests, just like Starmer and all the others that failed and lost power before him.